Do you struggle with clean and simple designs? Today I have 5 ways to elevate your clean and simple cards, as well as a bonus technique if you stick around to the end. Today I'm joining my friend Ardyth, who also loves to make clean and simple cards, so we thought we'd get together and share some fun techniques with you, and I'm going to link her video at the end. We've got a ton of stuff to do today, so we better get started. Alright, my first technique is to add texture, and what better way to do that than to use some felt. This is very affordable and there are thousands of colours to choose from. I love flowers in my cards, so I chose a die cut flower. It actually has a coordinating stamp set, but I literally just am going to be using the die cuts to cut felt out. I don't know if you knew that you can actually use your thin wafer dies to cut felt, but it works beautifully. They also cut some other fabrics as well, but you do need to test what you want to try before you work it out, because there are lots of different textures you can add to your projects. So I chose some beautiful colours and cut out the main designs. I also am going to use these same colours throughout all of my cards today, just to keep it simple and to challenge myself to do that. Now I would suggest that you test what glue you're going to use with your felt. You can use a hot glue. I like to use liquid glue. Initially I started with some Barely Art, but went back to the mono glue, which I know works really well with felt. It's not quite so thin. I added a piece of cardstock behind my main flower at the back, so that's just going to allow me to adhere it directly to my card front. So this card I made square, it's 4 1/4 inches, and I've added a salmon piece of cardstock just to the front of that, directly to the front of the card, and a die cut sentiment. I wanted to keep down that clean and simple line, and one of my favorite designs on clean and simple cards is to use a main focal point, which obviously is my flower today. And if you didn't want to add a die cut sentiment, you could certainly use a stamped one or leave it sentimentless and then add it later if you wanted to. Other ways that you can add texture is to use something like the wood veneer products that you can cut with a wafer thin die, regular felt, pom-poms, and I've also even used tulle as a skirt on a critter. And speaking of critters, my second technique today is to make an interactive card design. And I'm going to be using action wobbles. Now there are 2 different sizes, and one thing to be aware of is to make sure that the image that you're going to use is going to hide the action wobble. And because these panda bears are so huge, I could use one of the larger ones. And when you're using just one image for a clean and simple design, I like actually coming along with a big image like this and making a bold statement, but still keeping the card very clean and simple. I'm also going to be using a center placement on my cards for this design, but you can also put this off to the side if you'd prefer, depending on what sort of sentiment you're going to be using. And the other thing I wanted to talk about was you don't have to leave the image as is. I'm actually changing up what this panda is holding in her hands and decided to give her a little floral bouquet that she is eating. But that's okay. The other thing you can do to make these designs just a little bit more fun and interesting is to use maybe a punny or fun sentiment. This one says "You rock," but I took it a little step further and decided to actually do a 2-tone ombre sentiment. I used some acetate to check that I have the placement of the sentiment correct first before I commit to the card front. And what I do here is actually add some of the ink color just to the top portion of the sentiment. Use a little mini blending brush to kind of smudge out the edges so they're not too sharp. And then I can add the second color after cleaning my stamp to the base of the sentiment and do exactly the same thing again. That way I'm not going to contaminate my ink pads and I can get a 2-tone sentiment using a stamp positioning tool. My images, I often will double them up, so I'll cut a second die cut if I've got a coordinating die cut and just adhere that behind my image. I also thought it'd be fun here today to add a little party hat because she's gone to a party. She just can't help herself here. She's eating those leaves from the bouquet, but don't tell anybody. These Action wobbles have two sides, so the hard solid plastic side should sit behind the image. That way when you peel away the adhesive side, which is clear, that's going to be sitting on the base of your card, and if someone peeks a sneak around the corner to see how the mechanism works, they're not going to see that solid plastic portion. But don't worry, if you put it on backwards, which I have, it works just fine either way. And anyway, don't you love this sentiment? You rock. And then you can actually rock the bear. She's such a cutie. Other ways that you can add interactive designs to your Clean and Simple cards would be to make a shaker card or even a pop-up card you could do. These do not have to be complicated cards. And now we're on to our third technique. This time we're going to be using negative space. I like to use a repeat design and an odd number. And often I'll go for like a circle or a rectangle or a square. This time I was going to use the hearts, but then I saw this nesting cloud dies and thought it would be a lot of fun to create a repeat cloud negative space card. You may already know that it looks more pleasing to the eye to have odd numbers of images or elements, so that's why I chose to use 3 clouds, and I made sure that I chose one of the dies that would fit nicely and still give me space to pop up a panel for the front of my card. But to take it a little step further, I actually used some copy paper here, added some double-sided adhesive tape and just made some strips of coloured cardstock that's coordinating with the same colours that I'm using throughout today's cards. I will link everything that I'm using that's still available in the description below. If you have any questions today, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I will get back to you with a response as soon as I can, and if I don't know the answer, maybe I can find it out for you. So having this striped design sitting behind my negative cloud windows, I think just adds a little bit of fun to the whole card. You could just add a plain color if you wanted to. I'm actually doubling up my foam tape here because I want it to pop that little bit higher off the front of the card. But if you're worried about postage and too much dimension, just simply adhere your negative space panel to the front of your card. I added some cute little critters and also a speech bubble sentiment with some foam dots. So there is quite a bit of dimension on this card, but I really do like dimension. And another way that you can easily add some fun negative space to a Clean and Simple card design is to use a sentiment. So you can use a die cut sentiment, or even if you have separate letters, create your own. That looks amazing too. So the next way that I want to elevate my Clean and Simple designs is to add sparkle. This is a great way to add something special to a card. And what I've got here is a rectangle shaped stencil, and I'm trying to choose which focal point I'm going to use. And I've got lots of different critter stamps and just sort of working out which one I think might look the best. You could use whatever images you have. A floral image would look amazing with this technique as well. Now I've got a piece of cardstock. It's cut the same as an A2 card front, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I've positioned it in my stamp wheel and also added this stencil, which will hold in place because it actually has a sticky grid mat behind it. But you could certainly just mask off a rectangle area using post-it notes or even some copy paper, masking magic, whatever you typically use. I've stamped my image and just done some really simple colouring with some Copic markers. And now I want to add some blending to create my focal point. Like I said, I'm keeping to the same colours today, but you could easily use whatever colours are going to suit the project or the person that you're going to send the card to. I'm mixing both sort of a peachy colour and a pink just for something a little bit different, because normally I would choose a blue, so I wanted to push my boundaries and challenge myself, and that just adds a little bit of extra fun to card making. I'm just removing my mask now and restamping the image with some pigment ink. I used some tuxedo initially because I was going to do the Copic marker colouring. I've added a simple sentiment, just checking the placement with my acetate. And now here's the magic. I've got a quickie glue pen and I'm going to add lots of dots of really fine Prisma glitter to the whole image area. Now, I'm going to put some on the mouse and the image, but not a lot. Most of it's going to be in the background. You can add as little or as much as you want. This is not for the faint-hearted. If you are a glitter phobe, then do not do this. It will drive you insane. You'll be seeing glitter everywhere for weeks to come. Now, I've nearly run out of this jar of glitter, and I've had it for years and used it a lot. It goes a long way. And to remove the excess glitter, I just use a really soft brush once it's pretty dry. There are other ways to add sparkle. You can use sequins or crystals if you prefer not to use the glitter, or even glitter cardstock added to a clean and simple image looks amazing. Or even mirror or gold leaf. Now that's a scary thought. My next way to lift up your clean and simple designs is to emboss. Now I'm going to be doing some heat embossing, and I also want to colour with alcohol markers. So I've chosen an image that has nice bold outlines on it, but I've stamped it in some contour ink first, and you'll see why shortly. I'm actually colouring directly onto some coloured cardstock just to amp it up and change it up just a little. But if you prefer, you could always just use some white cardstock. I like to test my colours of alcohol markers on the same paper just off to the side to make sure that the colours are going to look how I want them to, because colouring on coloured cardstock will change the final look of the colours, so it's a good idea to test it first. And the reason why I used the contour ink first was because alcohol markers don't play well with heat embossed images. So by doing my colouring with that first, then I could come back and restamp the image with some Versamark ink and add my gold embossing powder and hit it with my heat tool. This never gets old. It's such a classic way to make your card look that little bit more special. So other ways that you can elevate your clean and simple designs using embossing is dry embossing. So you can actually use your dyes to add texture to cardstock by dry embossing it. And you can also use your stencils and dry emboss with those as well. And do some 3D embossing. That looks amazing. All right, so I told you there was going to be a bonus technique, and today's is to use design paper on your clean and simple designs. I've got some wonderful papers here. I would recommend using ones that have a really bold design for this technique, something that's really going to stand out on a clean and simple card and give you a really nice luscious pattern. So initially I was going to do a layered flower for this, but then I remembered that I'd created a flower card using this just one layer of the die cut with the rose in a previous card. So I looked at my floral layering die cut sets and grabbed a couple out that I thought might work with just one layer of the flower and decided on using the buttercup. So I'm not actually going to layer the flower. I'm going to use my design paper here to create almost like a silhouette version of the flower. So it was really important for me to choose a piece of design paper that I knew would work well with this. So basically I was able to keep the same colour tones that I'd used in my other cards by choosing this specific paper, but you could use whatever you have. And this is plain green cardstock. It's still design paper. It's like an ombre version to do the leaves, but you could also use a pattern on the stem and leaves as well. That would look amazing. Now I did want to layer this up and give the card some dimension, but you don't need to do this if you prefer not to. I also cut the same dies 4 times, use my liquid glue to layer it up, and that just makes it easier when I go to pop it up on the front of the card. I don't have to worry about those really fine intricate die cut details sort of getting squashed in the mail. The other way that you can do this is to use fun foam. That's my other favourite technique. So I added my sentiment. I'm literally just stamping it directly onto the front of the card, and then I can adhere my die cut with the liquid glue again. Balance is one of the most important things when it comes to clean and simple designs. So if you haven't got the balance right, the card won't look right. So a quick pro tip, if it's not right, sometimes I come in and I'll actually cut the card down and get the balance right and then add that to another card front. Or I'll add some sequins or enamel dots or crystals just to make it look like it's balanced perfectly on the card front. All right, so what have we done today? We've added texture using some felt. Then it was time to get all interactive and action wobble. We took negative space to the next level with some stripes in the background. And then we added a ton of sparkle because why not? And an oldie but a goodie, nothing like some heat embossing to lift your design. And for today's bonus technique, we were using some beautiful design paper to create a very clean and simple die-cut flower. I hope you're inspired by today's technique, and I'd love to know which one was your favourite, and if you're going to try any of these, let me know in the comments below. If you did enjoy today's video, don't forget to click on the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I'd love you to join me here. I know.
No, you didn't. You raved on.
What?
You were raving on.
No, I wasn't.
Get to the point and finish it off.
No, I'm hesitating so I can cut the video.
Yeah, I know what you're
It makes it easier.
Well, that's stupid.
I don't even know where I was now.
And at the end, you'll find her video.
What she said. And don't forget to join Ardyth, who's going to share with you her favourite ways to elevate her clean and simple card designs. I've got the link for her video right here.